Okay, yeah, just very shortly, we had a very interesting and fruitful discussion, I think, about what is the difference between analog and digital practices and technologies in fieldwork, and yeah, touched a lot of important central points, I think. For example, the objectivity, the fragmentation of knowledge. Are there more information documented in digital in comparison to analog? And how is this certainty is constructed in digital, like that you have always have a fixed line with the beginning and the end in comparison to analog possibilities of visualizing ambiguity. And probably I have missed a lot of other central points, so please correct me, the members of the discussion, but I would just stop at this at the moment. I hope we will continue with the discussion later.
Absolutely. We have a few minutes. Yes, it's certainly, we have a few minutes afterwards if we go according to time. So I would like now to invite Susie Rimvidas, who's going to present from Working Group 3, because I mean, we've shifted the order in order to allow Amber to come back at some point, or Melika. So Rimvidas or Susie, Working Group 3, please.
Okay, I can. Please, Susie.
Okay. I made some notes, but please jump in if I've forgotten anything. Again, like Tonya, I'll try and keep quite brief. But we started off talking about how, especially these sort of creolized groups around archaeological heritage that maybe don't perceive themselves as being archaeologists or even looking at archaeology in that sense. There can be various things happen with that, including that it can get weaponized. And we see this, for example, with some of the social media analyses that have been going on and the ways in which heritage gets used for different arguments and so on. And we discussed that it's quite interesting to compare that, for example, with more official stories that are portrayed by museums, by sort of even nation branding, sort of which identities are chosen to represent certain places. We got on, I'm going through this very quickly and probably missing quite a lot, but we inevitably started to get very excited about possible steps forward in the future, and really also taking into account the different expertises within the people that were in the group, looking at how we might combine linking with economic questions, but also with tourism as a concept, and thinking also about how we might look at how communities use contested and difficult heritages in the future as sort of future avenues of inquiry. That's probably, there was a lot more discussed as well, but that's really the summary, just to keep brief. Rimvidas, if you want to add anything, feel free, but you don't have to.
No.
Okay.
All right. So in the interest of brevity, then let's move on to the next group, fourth, Working Group 4, Archaeological Scholarship of Digital Environments. Eleftheria or Jeremy? Please.
Jeremy, do you want to? Or I can do whatever you want.
I'm happy to leave it in your capable hands.
Okay. So yes, just say very briefly, we had an interesting discussion. It was cut short, so we will continue tomorrow probably. But yes, first of all, it was a comment that Jeremy made at the beginning, which was, I think, very much to the point. Because I presented in my presentation these 4 topics, broader topics that Working Group 4 decided to focus at the beginning, and we realized that we obviously didn't cover any of this in any comprehensive way. So we had individual contributions, and we did individual work, of course, and some of the papers published perhaps are relevant to more than one of the 4 themes I presented, but actually there is so much more work to be done in all 4 areas. So these are still open. And then the discussion focused in two topics that are sort of relevant. One is the virtual research and learning environments. So also the Pure 3D project that Kostas presented was about virtual research environments, and then Morris made a talk about their project that has to do with virtual learning environments, and you can find the paper also. It's linked to the agenda online. and we were discussing if it could be possible to move forward or find funding, especially Erasmus Plus funding for some collaborations in this area. And then Emery started discussing the other aspect, not how we use digital tools to in our teaching and research and learning, but how we train archaeologists to do digital research in archaeology, which is the other aspects. So this is about digital training for archaeological research. And Emery made a very interesting position on this topic. But unfortunately, this is the point where the conversation was cut short. And yes, we joined the main session, and we are hoping to continue this discussion tomorrow.
Thank you. Thanks, Eleftheria. And now we're moving to the second working group, archaeology and archaeological data and collections. Amber or Melija, could you please share in 2 minutes your your breakout group discussion?
Thanks. So we talked a couple of different things. You know, there's been, we can think about issues associated with collections being things like access and findability and discoverability, but we were actually trying to pinpoint that it's probably a much bigger web of issues and problems going on. And we tried to talk about what some of those things might be. The fact that, you know, accessibility and findability can be a moving target, right? Because what some users want 20 years ago might not be what the users want now or 20 years in the future. There's also things that can't be ignored, like staff, what goes on within an institution, staff preferences, the politics of an organization and what they decide to digitize and what they decide not to digitize, or what they decide to prioritize, and just preferences about the work that they do and their ideas about what counts as access, or what should count as access. We talked about the idea of how sometimes, like, what is actual use? You know, there's indirect use, and that's quite a bit harder to track and, you know, really label as use. And